Here's the introduction to complex numbers and the imaginary number I. The definition, there's a lengthy definition if you'd like to pause and read about it. No need to write this down below here. But make sure you know that the square root of -1, that causes a problem when you have a negative, so you replace that with an I. If you have an I squared, it's replaced with -1. The reason why is I times I equals the square root of -1 times the square root of -1. If I combine those together, I get square root of -1 squared, which is -1. So here's an example below. Again, feel free to pause if you want to read about this, the imaginary numbers and complex numbers. The square root of -6. Notice there is a negative here, so you're going to replace that with an I out in front, and then 6. And that 6 will stay underneath, so I square roots of 6. Here are a few more examples to simplify. There's that negative, so the I is going to go out in front. Square root of 15, you can't do any breaking down with the square root of 15, so it just stays as it is. Next example has a negative, so replace that with an I out in front. And then reduce square root of 16. Square root of 16, remember, is 4 times 4. So square root of 16 is 4. And we always like to write the 4 first and then that imaginary I. So 4I is your final answer. Next example, 2 square roots of -18. Here's our imaginary part. So that's 2I, then the square root of 18. Break down 18 as 9 and 2. And if you remember, the square root of 9 is 3. So that's going to go out in front. And then you still have this 2I. And then what's left is this square root of 2 will stay underneath. So you want to multiply like parts together, the 3 and the 2, which is 6, and then I, and then square root of 2 stays underneath. Powers of I. There is a pattern that exists with these first 4. So anything raised to the 0 power is just 1. I raised to the 1 power is I. I squared we talked about in the definition is -1. And then I cubed, I just broke it down into I squared and I, which is -I. So here's where the pattern starts over again at 1, and then I, and then -1, and then -I, and then pattern starts over again, 1. So if you're trying to find out what is something I to the 16th, you can break down I to the 16th as I to the 4th times I to the 4th, I to the 4th, and I to the 4th. Well, I to the 4th is 1. So you get 1 times 1 times 1 times 1, which is just 1. So I to the 16th is 1.